For over 35 years, it's a long time, for over 35 years, he's been training in real estate. Our expert, Dolf de Roos, has appeared on over 4,500 radio stations daily for over 4 years and numerous TV shows. Too many to actually count or number. He is the author of 15 books on real estate, 14 of them on residential, 1 on commercial, which he'll tell you about, and many of them have been on the New York Times best-selling list. Dolf was born in New Zealand, schooled in Australia, and resides in Phoenix, Arizona. A truly international citizen of the world, Dolf speaks 6 languages. He has flown around the world over 106 times. He ranks among his clientele, his customers, both the Sultan of Oman and the highest paid athlete in the world. No stranger to Australian shores, Dolf has literally trained tens of thousands of people in property across Australia since the 1990s. He, in fact, was on the cover of the very first edition of a major property magazine in Australia, Your Investment Property Magazine, in 2007. He's responsible for getting my general manager's father, who's a farmer in Western Australia, into commercial real estate over 20 years ago. Most of the experts we work with, when they found out, they're going, he's the guy that got us into this 10, 15 years ago. And he's responsible for cementing my decision that real estate was the way to go over 10 years ago as well. He's been Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Property Advisor, Donald Trump University Trump faculty member, and Tony Robbins Wealth Mastery presenter. He's recognised as the foremost expert on commercial real estate in the world today. Would you please give a warm Sydney welcome to Mr. Dolf de Roos.
Thank you.
Welcome, Dolf.
Thanks, Stuart. Thank you. Please, no clapping. You don't know if it's going to be any good yet. I don't know if it's going to be any good yet. You know, it reminds me of the first time I was introduced on the stage in New York. They introduced me as the man who'd made $100 million in real estate in Australia. And I was kind of humbled by that, but I felt in the interest of integrity, I had to set the record straight. I said, listen, when you're in New York, you may think that the Sydney Harbour Bridge connects Australia to New Zealand, but it doesn't. It wasn't Australia, it was in New Zealand. And secondly, to be perfectly honest, it wasn't even in the real estate industry, it was in the oil industry when oil and gas was big there. And I said, thirdly, to be perfectly honest, it wasn't 100 million, it was only 10 million. And beside that, it wasn't me, it was my brother. And he didn't make 10 million, he lost 10 million. But apart from that, you've got the right person. So things are never what they seem. They aren't. And I've got something here just to prove that point. And this is sort of one of my favorite things to show. Well, you see, if you want to learn something tonight, though, you have to go beyond your comfort zone. Have you heard that before? Do you know that? So I'm here to teach you something about real estate. And I'm willing to sacrifice myself in order that you do learn. I'm not here to make you like me. I'm here to have you walk out tonight and say, wow, I've learned something new. Is that cool? So I do want to thank Stuart for putting on this awesome event. I mean, you know, look at the support they give you here and getting everyone together. So thank you for all you've done, the entire team. They've been nothing but gracious and very professional. But I also want to thank him for being accurate in his introduction. And you might think, oh yeah, that's easy to say, the world's highest paid sports person. Well, we were in my office in America, and this guy called, and the girls went weak in the knees. They said, oh my gosh, it's A-Rod calling for Dolf. And I said, who's A-Rod? And which guy would call himself a rod unless he had an inferiority complex about something? I did. And they said, take the call, take the call. So this dude in a laconic voice said, hey, how'd you like to come to my game this weekend in Houston? And I thought, well, he's a sports player, you know, big deal. I'm not into sport. And when you come from a world where we play cricket and rugby, and you see the guys there put on shoulder pads and helmets, and they call that football, you think this is for sissies, you know. So I said, well, I can't, Houston, because I've got an event on in Seattle this weekend. He said, well, how about next weekend in New York? I said, I'm in San Diego. Well, he kept calling me, and one day he called and he said, and I've got to add here that from his accent, I thought he was an African American. I thought he was black. And so I thought, he's black and he's a sports player, he's a basketball player, right? My naivety. So I got it in my mind that he was a basketball player. And you know that when you have a theory, you'll always find evidence to support that theory, right? With anything. So I got it in my head that that's what he was. He calls one day and he says, I see you're doing a weekend event in Dallas. I said, yes, at the Intercontinental. He said, well, can I see you on the Monday after that? Because I live in Dallas. And I felt like saying, well, that's nice. I live in Phoenix. But I said, no, I can't see you on the Monday morning. I've got a TV interview. And he said, well, my bodyguard can pick you up after the interview. And I thought, bodyguard? I thought, I can play this game of one-upmanship. I said, well, I'll have my assistant with me. And he said, my secretary will pick her up. And I thought, why can't you come with me? So I sort of forgot about it. I did the event. I did the TV interview Monday morning. I walk out. There's Boris, the bodyguard. Come with me, sort of thing. So we drove to this palatial mansion overlooking Lake Dallas. There were guys with chef hats running around and all that. And I'm sitting on the couch next to Boris, and suddenly he elbows me and says, that's him. I said, pardon? He said, that's him. I said, that's who? He said, that's A-Rod. I said, no, A-Rod's black. And he heard me. I said, you're A-Rod? He said, yeah, pleased to meet you. I said, yeah, I'm pleased to meet you. I said, the next thing you're going to tell me is you're not a basketball player. He said, no, I'm a baseball player. I said, well, pleased to meet you. And I got it completely wrong. And not only friends, but strangers cringe about this, because he ended up writing the foreword to this book, Real Estate Riches, including the bit where it says, despite the fact that he thought I was a basketball player and not a baseball player. You don't know him, maybe. Does anyone know who he is? A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez? He's Alex Rodriguez. He's on a $253 million contract. He's the highest paid sports person on this planet. And he sought me out because most sports people, and this is very interesting, they earn a lot of money, millions of dollars, some of them, and then they retire at 30, 31, 32, somewhere around there, either through old age or injury. And then within 3 years, they're broke, usually because of fast food, fast cars, and fast women, right, in reverse order. And then they call me and they say, I really need you to help me. Not even I'd like you to or I want you to, but I need you to help me. I said, well, what have we got to work with? He says, well, I'm broke, but I like being rich, so make me rich again. I said, okay, and you can't play sport anymore? You know, how am I supposed to do that with nothing? But he's done it differently. He owns a lot of real estate. He's made more money through real estate than by being the highest paid sports person. And he credits me with that. So it's a big accolade. So it's all as Stuart said. I mean, he sought me out. And I know a lot of you are having a lot of trouble focusing on what I'm saying because you still can't get over this. So let's deal with this right now. May I have a show of hands, please? How many have read this and agree with it and are willing to admit that they agree to it? 3 people. Okay. Well, I'm just curious who came here on their own tonight. You know? So may I have a show of hands? How many disagree with it? All right, now, folks, not even a third of you have voted on this. You haven't. And here's the first lesson for you to learn. If you can't make a decision on something as inane as this, how are you ever going to buy a commercial property? I know exactly what will happen. The agent will come up to you and say, well, here it is. It's got a 28% return. It's got a 59-year lease still to run on it. Do you want to buy it? You know, put your hand up if you do. No, this is what he'll say. Put your hand up if you don't. And he'll say, well, if you're not sure, do you need more information? What? If you can't decide on something like this, do you know the answer in your head so you just don't want to share it? Or you don't want to tell that cute chick you met on the way in that you actually agree with it? Or what is it? So how many have read it and agree with it? Right. Oh, quite a few of you. That's weird, you guys. You guys are weird. And how many disagree with it? Now we've got some engagement. Give yourselves a round of applause. Okay. Well, I want to do something here to just change it up a bit. I'm going to put a colon after the word woman, and I'm going to put a comma after the word her. Now, notice how the laughter comes in waves. No, it does. This group got it quite early on. This one took a bit of time. Some of you, I can tell from years of experience, some of you are looking at it and say, what's so funny? If you don't understand it, ask someone in the break, okay? I'm kidding, because there's not a break. But anyway, if you get it, I mean, we've completely changed the meaning of the sentence. Would you agree? Oh, by the way, may I have a show of hands now, especially some of those women who didn't like me much recently? How many of you agree with it now? All right. And how many of you disagree with it? Okay, thank you. And here's the point, folks. My point is that by putting 3 silly little marks on the screen or sheet of paper or whatever, do you agree that we've completely changed the meaning of that sentence? My aim tonight is to put 3 little marks figuratively on your mind, your perception, your understanding of commercial real estate, so that I might completely change the way you see it. Because unless you're already investing regularly in commercial real estate, you don't really understand what it's all about sufficiently well to do it. And I'm here to convince you that it's a good thing to do, and that's why I do it. Even though I've written 15 books, some of them are here, most of them are on residential real estate. Not because that's my passion, that's because if I'm going to help a large body of people, that's where I need to start helping them. But my personal passion is doing commercial, for reasons that we'll go over tonight. Are we all good so far on that? Okay. So, there are many angles we can take, but one of the things I want to look at is some of the background as to why I got here. Now, all of you have heard of Donald Trump, I imagine, if not A-Rod, and he comes across in his TV programs as being very opinionated, to put it very diplomatically. But he's actually, not a bad person. He's got a very kind heart and everything. And he came up with a series called The Wealth Builder's Blueprint, where he invited 7 people to speak on specific topics. Marketing, taxation, intellectual property, things like that. And he invited people to talk on all these things. And I would have thought that he would want to teach the real estate section himself, but I was honored by being asked to teach that bit. And there's the DVD we did. It's called Money While You Sleep. So I've worked with him, and I've created all kinds of products with him, bubble-proof real estate investing. And there I am on the faculty of Trump University, I think for 4.5 years. There I teach at Wealth Mastery, as Stuart said. Here's one, Jim Rohn. Does anyone know who Jim Rohn is? Jim Rohn was one of the most amazing guys there is. We were doing this event, 2006, I believe, in Kuala Lumpur and Singapore. And after the event in Kuala Lumpur, he came down to me and said, Dolf, tell me, where are you living these days? And I said, well, I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. And he said, no kidding, me too. What part of Phoenix are you in? And I said, well, I'm in the Biltmore. It's a part of town called the Biltmore. He said, I know it. No kidding, I live there too. He said, what street are you on? And I said, I'm not going to tell you whatever I say. You'll say, no kidding, me too, I said, you tell me what street you're on. And he did, and I said, no kidding, me too. We were 3 doors apart and had to go to Kuala Lumpur to find it out. One of the nicest guys you'd ever meet. He's got a real heart of gold, and he is one of the most inspirational people. He died very unfortunately December the 5th, a couple of years ago. He was a big loss to the world. But I've had the honor and pleasure of working with a lot of these guys. I've been a professor of real estate at the University of North Texas. And then I was in the Rich Dad's Advisor series, as you probably know. This book has been translated into Bahasa. Many people don't know in which country they speak Bahasa. Bahasa is spoken in 2 countries, Malaysia and Indonesia. Indonesia, do you know it's the most populous nation in the southern hemisphere? Do you know there are more dollar millionaires in Indonesia than there are people in Australia? I mean, it's just phenomenal. And it's a canoe ride from Australia. In essence, right? I mean, it is. You can get there in a skiff or something. And there are opportunities there that are just... What's that? Not you? Okay. Well, anyway, there are huge. So we've got it in Bahasa. And then in Japanese. Now, I speak Japanese, so I've done a lot of work there. Here's an interesting one. 52 homes in 52 weeks. I once went to Vegas and bought a house. And I managed to do it without any of my own money, and it was cash flow positive. And I came back, and people said, what did you do this weekend? I said, I'm more excited, and I tend to talk, so I share. I said, well, I went to Vegas, and I bought a house. And they said, well, that's all right for some, isn't it? I said, what do you mean? Well, if you can afford it, you can buy one. I said, no, it didn't cost me any money. And it's putting money in my pocket. And they said, well, you can't do that. Now, I don't know about you, but if someone says to you, hey, I just had lunch on the moon, I'd give you every right to say you can't do that with your arms folded. But if someone said they just rode a bicycle around lake whatever, or they bought a house and it didn't cost them any money, what right do you have to say you can't do that? You might as well say, I think you're lying. So I got so sick of hearing it's impossible to do, I thought I'll show them. I'll buy one house a week for an entire year. And I did. And I wrote the book on it. I've got a CD course on it. I've run courses on it. And you know what people say now? You can't do that. So I've learned that there's no point convincing the naysayers. And I'm not here to convince you if you're a naysayer. If anything I say is impossible, what you're really saying is, well, I think you might have been able to do it, even though I seriously doubt it. But I know I couldn't do it. And because I can't do it, and I'm not the dumbest person on this planet, then I don't think the average person should, and you probably haven't done it anyway. And because I want to deny myself the right to do it, I'm going to think that you didn't do it either. That's why you can't do that. Instead of just flipping it around like those 3 dots on that sheet and saying, well, if you've done it, show me the numbers. I mean, I discuss every property. I've got photos of them, the people involved. It's all real, and you can check the titles anyway. Instead of that, why don't you say, you know, well, if he can do it, I can do it too. Maybe he'll teach me how. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm not a teacher, folks. I'm not an author, even though I've been blessed by having books on the New York Times bestseller list. By the way, that's the holy grail of book writing, right? Movie makers want to get an Oscar, and what else is there? There are all these awards that are specific to certain industries. And if you're a book writer, you want to be on the New York Times list. Well, I don't even think of myself as an author. Even today, I'm a property investor, and I'm happy to share how I do it.